Chapter 5 specifically examines the role, if any, which the late Gregory Smith, Sergeant of the Guyana Defense Force, played in the death of Dr. Walter Rodney, and if so, to inquire into who may have counseled, procured, aided, and or abetted him to do so, including facilitating his departure from Guyana after Dr. Walter Rodney's death, TOR 3. In reviewing the evidence relative to TOR 2, we considered in detail the role that Gregory Smith played in the death of Walter Rodney and concluded that he knowingly brought about Rodney's death. We have also given consideration to the role of the state in his death. We must now consider how Smith came to leave Guyana and what assistance he was given in doing so and its implications. This is the summary given by Anne Wagner of Gregory Smith's account. Quote, "Okay, when 3 men picked him up in front of his house and told him to come, and he said, 'No, let me go to the station and report it.' They roughed him up. He was crying, he was shaking. He could not believe that his friend, Dr. Walter Rodney, was dead. He was in a bad state. The guy gave him 2 pills and told him this is going to calm you down, and they drugged him. When he woke up, he was in Kwakwani." End of quote. She continued that after, quote, 2 or 3 days, they brought him down to Georgetown and they took him to a ship that was going to Trinidad. And they told him that when he goes to Trinidad, the WPA would give him fake documents and some money. He never heard from them. My brother was in Trinidad with no documents, no money, no clothes, and all the news flashing that he's a murderer, that he killed Dr. Walter Rodney. End of quote. There he was destitute. He returned to Guyana, where he stayed for a few days, and then traveled to Cayenne, the capital of French Guyana, where he remained until his death. But there's credible evidence of the state's involvement in transporting him from Georgetown on the 14th day of June 1980 to Kwakwani by Gerald Govaya, then a serving member in the GDF, utilizing a GDF Islander airplane numbered 8RGER. This was on the instructions of his superiors. According to Govaya, he did not realize at the time that he was given these instructions that his passenger was to be Gregory Smith, the man implicated in the death of Walter Rodney. In giving his evidence, Mr. Govaya testified that he was unable to recall from memory transporting Smith from Kwakwani on June 17th. On Govaya's evidence, he only learned of Smith's identity some days later when he saw Smith's photograph in the Catholic Standard in an article relating to the explosion and death of Walter Rodney. He further testified that he had consulted his personal logbook in which he stated that it is recorded that he did pilot GDF airplane 8RGER on June 17, 1980, but what is recorded there is that the journey was from Temeri to Tacoma, a military base. From the police files that were produced into evidence at this inquiry, at least 4 witnesses based in Kwakwani provided the police with statements confirmatory of Gregory Smith being transported to the airstrip at Kwakwani on June 14, 1980, and from the said airstrip on June 17. On both occasions, Smith was transported in an Army-marked airplane. For example, reference may be made to the statements of Anita Thom, Joel Southwell, and Egerton Causeway. All supernumerary police attached to the airstrip located at Guyana Mining Enterprise situated at Kwakwani, as well as that of Avril Bourne, a resident of Kwakwani. Those witnesses all gave statements to the police investigator that a young man fitting the description of Gregory Smith was transported to the Kwakwani airstrip in an Army airplane. Southwell and Bourne both identified the airplane by its number, GER 8RGER. Bourne's statement further records, quote, that the man, thin built of mixed race, he is about 5 feet 7 inches, brown complexion, and has narrow features. The woman is of Indian descent, her hair was cut short, and she's about 5 feet 4 inches, brown complexion, and has sound features. They had some children along with them, end of quote. She recalls that she was later introduced to the man by one Lillian Smith, quote, as my handsome son, Gregory Smith, end of quote. Approximately 1 month later, she was shown 2 photographs and was able to identify the images captured there as Gregory Smith and the woman who had accompanied him. One other witness, namely Robert VanContin, gave a statement in which it is recorded that he saw someone he discovered to be Gregory Smith, quote, who I was introduced to earlier by his father, Cecil Smith, who lives at Kokwani Park, end of quote. It is reasonable to infer that these photographs shown to Bourne by or in the presence of Detective Winston Seigel, who is the person who took the statement from her on the same day, are photographs that were shown to her. All statements taken from individuals at Kokwani and included in the police files were taken by Seigel. All the witnesses who gave statements that they saw the person alight from the Army airplane on June 14, 1980, or saw a quote-unquote strange man in the village between June 13 and 17, were shown photographs which they were able to confirm as having captured the images of the man they had seen. The evidence of these witnesses, both individually and taken together, sharply contradict the account attributed to Gregory Smith in the book Assassination Cry of a Failed Revolution. In response to the question whether Gregory Smith appeared drunk or disoriented when he entered the GDF plane, Gavaya confirmed that what he observed did not accord with someone being groggy or not operating on his own. He, Gavaya, did not see his passenger being transported to the plane by other persons. In addition, there's nothing in the statements of Avril Bourne, George Southwell, or Anita Thom to indicate that the man who alighted from the Army plane on June 14th appeared groggy, disoriented, or drugged. The aircraft used by Gavaya was sold sometime after, and the evidence is that the plane's logbook would have accompanied it to its new owner. The further evidence is that the personal files of Gregory Smith, which would have existed as part of the GDF records, have gone missing, and it is believed that they were among files destroyed when there was a flooding of a particular GDF building. The suggestion that Smith's missing file was the result of a flood is decidedly rejected as a fabrication and is discussed elsewhere. In the book Assassination Cry of a Failed Revolution, it is stated that Gregory Smith's departure from Guyana to French Guyana was facilitated by WPA affiliates, and in the process he was given new travel documents under the name Cyril Milton Johnson. The said travel documents facilitated his entry into French Guyana. However, the witnesses who were associated with the WPA during the period under consideration deny any knowledge of the WPA facilitating Smith's exit from Guyana. It is the evidence of AUC Guyana, one of the three co-leaders of the WPA at the relevant time, that to the contrary, WPA members had their own passports seized. They did not have the kind of influence with the Immigration Department that would enable them to assist Smith in the manner recorded in his book. He testified as follows, quote, now the WPA has had some of its passports seized and could not make a passport as he alleged we did for him, so this was inconsistent with our experience, end of quote. This was confirmed by Jocelyn Dow, a sympathizer and supporter of the WPA, whose evidence was that in addition to the lack of influence with immigration, a further obstacle to travel was that one required a tax clearance, which known supporters of the WPA were not generally provided. What is undeniable is that Gregory Smith was issued with passport number 268685 on the 5th of July 1980 in the name of Cyril Milton Johnson. Endorsed on this passport is his exit from Guyana and arrival in French Guyana on the 7th day of July 1980. It is also worthy of note that the passport shows Cyril Milton Johnson re-entering Guyana on the 19th day of June 1982. These documents were produced by Sergeant Alexis Adams of the Immigration Department, who also produced application form for a new passport on the expiration of passport number 268685. On the evidence of Sergeant Alexis Adams, there were flagrant irregularities with respect to the application form for passport number 0890057 for Cyril Milton Johnson made in 1999, which was marked as Exhibit ARW2 and admitted into evidence. This evidence from an immigration officer completely undermines the credibility of the account given in the book as to Smith being facilitated in his departure from Guyana under the auspices of the WPA. Evidence has also been presented to this commission which establishes inferentially that the girlfriends of Gregory Smith, subsequent to the explosion in 1980, were spirited away by the government. It is the evidence of in-camera witness 2 that Gwendolyn Ramatar, believed to be the same person as Gwendolyn Jones, and her 2 sons who were fathered by Gregory Smith, were sent out of Guyana by the government to New York. There is also evidence from the police crime files concerning one Joan Melvin, who described herself as the fiancée of Gregory Smith. Joan Melvin, in her statement given to the police on the 3rd of July 1980, averred that she was employed to the Ministry of Health and Labor as the confidential secretary to the permanent secretary until around the 23rd of June 1980. By the 3rd of July 1980, she had become a diplomat employed at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and was slated to depart Guyana on assignment to the Guyana Consulate in New York by the 6th day of July 1980 for an indefinite period. There is common ground between Gavaya and Wagner that, however Gregory Smith traveled to Kokwani, he was accompanied by a woman, identified by Wagner as Gwendolyn Jones, and children. Anne Wagner, in answer to questions posed by counsel Mr. Andrew Pilgrim, confirmed the relationship between Gregory Smith and both Gwendolyn Jones and Joan Melvin. She testified that at the time of her evidence, they were both living in the United States. Although some of the statements in the crime files on this and other points could not be tested, as their authors did not attend and give sworn evidence, they can nevertheless be accorded a high degree of credibility as there is supporting evidence about them from witnesses who appeared before the commission. And unlike Gregory Smith, the authors of these statements cannot be said to fall into the category of persons with an interest of their own to serve. The state agencies responsible for the institution of criminal prosecutions only issued a warrant for Gregory Smith's arrest in 1996, following the visit of the investigating team from the International Commission of Jurists and their report published in 1980. The advice preferred by the then Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Ian Chang, was that Gregory Smith be charged with the offense of murder, although his personal recommendation for a charge of manslaughter was noted. The evidence is that Gregory Smith re-entered the jurisdiction of Guyana on the 19th of June 1982 under the name Cyril Milton Johnson. That was only 2 years post the 13th of June 1980, and the supply of a passport to him was by a process which circumvented the legal requirements. That no warrants for his arrest had been issued prior to 1996 is instructive, and there is no indication as to what diplomatic or other efforts were made to secure the extradition of Gregory Smith from French Guyana. The evidence clearly points to the state procuring and facilitating Smith's departure from Guyana, ensuring that he remained outside of the jurisdiction and beyond the reach of the laws. That concludes Chapter 5.